Yes. So, welcome all to this Gender in Global History seminar series. Today, we welcome Antje Richter, who is going to talk to us about coping with separation, variations on a theme in early medieval Chinese poetry, letter writing, and storytelling. And Antje was originally a Germanist, but you're still a Germanist, I guess, at heart, but now a professor of Chinese at the University at Colorado Boulder. And her research centers on literature and culture of early and medieval China. She's published letter writing and epistolary culture in early medieval China, and edited a volume called History of Chinese Epistolary Culture, which came out on Brill, 2015. And most recently, and here you must help me out, Antje, the book Health and the Art of Living, Illness Narratives in Early Medieval Chinese Literature. From what I gather, it just came out.
Right.
Or is it? Yeah. So congratulations.
I've got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Mm.
So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Svante, for this lovely introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this project, and also to present in this project. I feel it's a really important and relevant inquiry into people living apart on this planet in so many different forms. Although what you are interested in is mostly the early modern period, 16th, 17th century, etc., I feel that in all traditions worldwide, much of what is how separation and reunion is conceptualized is based in earlier traditions. And I feel that in particular with the strong Chinese tradition, that is definitely the case. So many of the cultural patterns of behavior, of conceptualizing, are based in 2000 or older, or even 3,000-year-old traditions in China. Let me share my screen with you here. Can you see that now? Yeah. I would like to talk mostly about letters today, but I would like to frame this a little bit by extending the reference beyond letter writing. I would like to first look a little bit into early poetry and early myth, um, to anchor separation in the cosmos. Basically, everything that's important in a Chinese tradition has a cosmic anchoring, starting from literature, where the patterns of the sky are compared to the patterns on the page, etc. Then I'll move on to letters as very practical means to bridge separations on Earth. And this is probably going to be just a tiny little view into the huge world of storytelling, where separation also plays a great role. I must admit that I only fully realized that after I attended the workshop in Lund, when my mind kind of got primed to think about separation in a different way than I had earlier. Yeah. But first, let me start with previous research. And this is Charles Stafford's book, Separation and Reunion in Modern China. It's already 25 years old, but it still emphasizes and it still describes very relevant phenomena. And Charles, in particular, describes separation as a fundamental and universal part of the human condition. But he also shows that in China, rituals, narratives, and rituals of separation and reunion are unusually elaborate, unusually explicit, and unusually literal. So this is definitely the case Charles shows this by looking into festivals, rituals, historical awareness, partly also poetry, and he goes even into political discussions, in particular when it comes to to China and Taiwan. I would like to start by taking this anchoring in the cosmos, the anchoring of separation in the cosmos, by showing you an asterism, the summer triangle, that since early times in China, maybe 3,000 years at least, we don't have knowledge about earlier periods, plays a great role in conceptualizing separation. This cosmic framing is associated with two stars in particular. The stars are Vega and Altair, here shown on a part of the Great Wall near Beijing. As the left image shows here, Vega, Altair, and Deneb are part of three constellations, Cygnus, Lyra, and Aquila, but these are not going to interest us here. For me, the Milky Way is the most important thing here. It is clearly visible in the image to the right. And it's also clearly visible on this mural from the early 6th century. This painting of the sky on the tomb ceiling firmly situates the afterlife, and thus also the tomb occupant in the cosmos, a feature that we see in very different forms in early Chinese funerary culture. Interestingly, though, the Milky Way is not a way at all in Chinese, but it is a river. Variously called the Celestial River, the Cloudy Han or He, the Silvery Han or He, and it is imagined to be a continuation of the huge Chinese rivers Han and He. Most European languages, starting from the Greek, but we also see this in Arabic, for example, conceptualize the Milky Way as a way or a road. Whereas Chinese and other East Asian languages describe it as does the do South Asian languages, South American languages, Australian languages. In India, for example, we have this notion of the heavenly Ganges. Thinking of a river and thinking of a road, of course, evoke a very different association of the difficulty of crossing them. So thinking of a river, we have immediately this notion that it can be difficult to cross it. This has given rise in China to the famous star myth of the cowherd and the weaving woman. I'm sure everybody who's to do with China has heard of this already. It's the story of two lovers separated by the Milky Way. There are many, many different stories in which this is told, a wide variety of versions. I'm not going to go into them here. The image that I'm showing you here is from an early medieval Korean tomb. So this is near Pyongyang. And it shows this the cowherd and the weaver woman very clearly to both sides of the river that you are seeing here. At the core of this ancestral tale is reunion. So 364 days of separation are crowned by one day of reunion, imagined to happen on the eve of the 7th day of the 7th month. This is a festival that is celebrated in China, in the whole of East Asia. In Japanese, for example, it's called the Tanabata Festival. In China, we know of this festival since the Han Dynasty. So it has at least a 2,000-year history here. The separation, the long separation and brief, complicated reunion of these two lovers is described in various forms in poetry as the stars. We, for the first time, see those two mentioned in the Book of Odes, not in a connection with a love story, though. But starting from the Han Dynasty, we have love poetry, we have this festival, we have early images. This is, of course, a very recent image, very likely late 19th century. And in poetry, this has given rise to an incredibly large corpus of poems that mention a separation, lovers' separations, friends' separations, and also love poetry that stands in for an official separation from their ruler in very different forms. And a huge portion of them operate with astral myth. And the astral myth of the cowherd and the weaver woman is very important in that respect. The fact that the bureaucratic system of China, which started in full force in the Han Dynasty, required officials to travel all the time, and also required them to write poetry for all kinds of reasons. The combination of these factors probably contributed to this proliferation of farewell poetry, of separation poetry in China. I'm going to show you only one example here. It was written by a not very well-known poet, Fu Xuan, in 3rd century CE. And it is a poem that already mirrors a poem written a few hundred years earlier. Again, we are in a very typical kind of situation for the creation of poetry in China here. The one I'm reading the translation here, which is based on a translation by Anne Burrell. The one I love lives in Yingzhou. I wish we were a pair of swans playing midstream. What I'm highlighting here for you in blue is water, water imagery that we are seeing. Cowherd and weaver woman's meeting is in autumn. Mountains high, rivers deep, no way to pass. Miserable, unlucky am I, overcome by despair. My handsome one gave me a bright moon pearl. How will I pledge him? With eye-to-eye fish. The sea is wide, I have no boat, bitter torment. I sent my message to flying dragons, coursers of the skies. Winds rise, clouds divide, flying dragons vanish. Waves in panic dash against skies, coursers not in pairs. Why do many memories make the heart world weary? I have mainly chosen Fu Xuan's poem because it alludes to the writing of letters. Yeah, this is again a combination that we are frequently seeing. A separation is evoked, and a way to bridge the separation is evoked at the same time. Often they are letters. Sometimes they can be dreams. This is also something that came up, I believe, at the workshop last October. Although in this case, the possibility of communication by letter seems purely theoretical because the envisioned messengers are mystical beings, yeah, that might not be as effective or just purely imaginary as the speaker of the poem imagines. So this brings me down to earth, basically, to letter writing as a way to bridge separations, as also a very practical way to take care of separation issues and to send the other one, apart from asking questions about all kinds of things, also greetings and sentiments. So these are two elements that we are frequently seeing here. I would like to read you an excerpt from one of the earliest letters that we have from the Qin dynasty. So this is 3rd century BCE. So these are archaeologically retrieved letters. Most of the materials of this time is not correspondence, but there are also a few private or semi-private letters among them. And this is one of the 3 earliest letters that we've got here, written by 2 conscripts of the Qin army. They are obviously brothers on a military campaign in the south, and they write to relatives, probably also neighbors at home. I'm quoting, and I am quoting the translation by Enno Giele here. Jing is happy to send Zhong his greetings. How is mother? How are the wives and kids, the other relatives, and the housemates? Is mother healthy and well? I am with the troops on campaign, staying together with Heifu, and both of us are fine. Could mother please send 500 or 600 cash and double-layered cloth, fine one, mind you, and no less than 25 feet. Use the cash from Yanbao. If you really don't send it, I will just die. It is very, very important. To Xinfu and Wan, my very best wishes. How are both of you? Xinfu, do your best to look after the 2 old parents, because I'm far from home. You, Zhong, should teach Wan well. Tell her not to go too far away, like when she's gathering firewood. Do the shrine sacrifices for me. If they are greatly lacking, it's because I'm living in a rebel city. Jing is happy to send Auntie his greetings. Auntie, how was your giving birth? Robbers have entered the new territories. Zhong, would that you are not right now travel to the new territories. This is very important. This is the end of the letter. So these letters are not by no means literary masterpieces, but they do convey, apart from these urgent requests for help, for money and materials, a very strong affection and very strong care of the writers for their relatives, and probably also extended families. Even if the letters do not speak of any imminent danger for the writers, they exude this air of vulnerability that is so characteristic of war letters. Messages written in a time of war are especially unreliable signs of life, since there is a higher probability that the writers did not survive the time it took for the letter to arrive where it was meant to go. The translation that I just mentioned is from an article in the handbook that Svante so kindly mentioned just now in the introduction. So I published this handbook in 2015. It's taking a look at Chinese epistolary culture through the ages, also at different aspects, history, art history, culture, etc. And so stretching basically from the Han Dynasty to the 20th century, I think the earliest, the most recent article concerns letter writing in a cultural revolution. So this, if you are interested, I'm sure you can find inspirations there for sort of getting an idea of Chinese letter writing culture, which is a field that is slowly growing within Chinese studies, but by no means rich yet. 2 years earlier, I had published this book that Svante also kindly mentioned. In this book, I focus on one period, but I try to cover, short as the book is, a number of aspects going from materiality of writing to conventions and literary thought. So I would especially like to mention the fact that in early medieval China, we see a media change happening from bamboo, wood. So these earlier letters were written on wood, and also silk, but this is kind of a very expensive stationery, to paper. So by the end of the early medieval period, paper was all over the place, and earlier materials were only used for antiquarian purposes, we might say. One of the most common epistolary topoi that I looked at was the topos of lamenting separation. Yeah, so there's hardly any letter that can do without that. And whether you're writing to family, whether you're writing to your superiors, whether you're writing to anybody, some of this needs to come up. Wang Xizhi, the greatest Chinese calligrapher in the view of most people, in one of his letters said, "To meet and to part again is a constant in the texture of." He mentions this in a very almost funny letter written to a friend whom he had left while very drunk, and apologizing for not paying enough attention to the severity of their saying farewell to each other. In the chapter that I just showed you in my book, I particularly emphasize that many letters pay attention to the length of separation. So not so much you are at the other end of the world, which is something that poetry more often does, but we haven't seen each other for so long. This is something that's particularly difficult to understand from a contemporary situation where we rarely are separated for longer periods from people, or if we are, it's more of a choice than necessity. But if we imagine difficulties of transportation, unstable political situations, etc., the length of separation can extend enormously. One writer laments that he has not met his correspondent for more than 30 years. Wang Xizhi, in another letter, cites 26 years, other writers 24. In these cases, we can be certain that it's concrete times that they are talking about, and that they are not speaking metaphorically. I had the impression, or at least the letter writing suggested, that length of time is felt more keenly because the passing of time during separation was associated with aging and death. Sometimes I got the impression that the emphasis on the final separation that might happen, the separation by death, was always in the background of writing here. Reading to you from a letter by Wang Lang, early 3rd century, to show you that letters also operated with references to poetry, in particular to the Book of Odes that I mentioned earlier as the book where we first see the two stars, cowherd and weaver made mention. So Wang Lang writes, "To receive news that you are safe and sound, Wenqiu, was very good indeed. Can you imagine that we have been separated for more than 30 years already? And still there is no opportunity to see you." In the Odes, people compare a separation lasting for one day with years and months. How would they have coped if it had lasted dozens of years? After our separation, I have often felt as though I were drowning and rising to the surface again, or were broken apart and joined together again. As it is now, so it will be. So it will continue to be in the future. Wang Lang here, in particular, refers to one of the odes, in which the first stanza says, "A day without seeing you is like 3 months." And in each continuing stanza, this is vamped up. It's like a week, a month, a year, etc. Yeah. This ode, many other odes are mentioned in other letters as well. Our astral pair does not really play a great role, though. It seems to have really become popular only in the 5th century when we see writers alluding to cowherd and weaver woman. Aiming toward this fundamental transitoriness of life, the hyperbole of these comparison is all over the place. In many letters, lamenting separation goes hand in hand with the celebration of reunion, though. To cite a few examples from a number of letters, I only hope that you can return soon. Holding my brush, I am feeling sad. We won't be sitting knee to knee anytime soon. I'm looking east with deep emotion. I only hope that the days and months will pass easily and that the time of your return may not be far away. Mountains Hung and Wu are extremely high, and the Han River is so long. When we'll be able to grasp our sleeves again and open our hearts to each other. Especially when the letter writers express a longing for their addressee, language that is very physical and bodily comes into play. Yeah, touching the other person, tears streaming down, etc., evoking the physical presence in the letter of the other person. In my book, I've also mentioned, and I believe this is an important part of this topos of separation, that drawing attention to the separation increases the epistolarity of the letter. So it draws attention to the letter itself. And many of these letters, basically, they have no other function. They don't report, hey, send me money or this or that. It's mostly about keeping up the conversation and the connection between the letter writers. To cite Wang Xizhi again, in one of his letters to Zhou, I reckon 26 years have passed since I said goodbye to you. Although we frequently exchange letters, they cannot dispel the longing for you that I've harbored for so long. Perusing your last 2 letters has only increased my sadness. Lately, it's been snowing heavily, and it is colder than it has been in 50 years. I hope everything is going well for you these days. I only hope to receive further news from you in the next summer or autumn. Of late, I've been missing you more than I can say. Letters can offer only something that resembles a connection and a meeting, and the presence that the letter evokes often leaves the addressee unsatisfied. As Wang Xizhi makes clear when he says, perusing your last 2 letters has only increased my sadness. Wang Xizhi is so famous in China. So if you are not within Chinese studies, it's very difficult to imagine that this letter, for example, that I just read to you, is put on all kinds of consumer products, like a tote bag. So Wang Xizhi's writing, this is as if somebody in Europe would walk around with a Mona Lisa t-shirt or a Van Gogh t-shirt or something like that. So this is just this enormous relevance of calligraphy, calligraphy that was in particular is in particular praised for letter writing calligraphy because it's not so studied. And Wang Xizhi's handwriting in particular was regarded to be a perfect expression of his spontaneous and of his feelings in the moment and his spontaneity. Oh, 2 more minutes. Stories. I have to keep this short. So there's a whole world of storytelling in early medieval China, a genre that I've been particularly interested in for many years is a genre that's called records of the strange. Yeah, in these records of the strange, often described as supernatural, a term I did try to avoid though, because within the world of records of the strange, the events that were described were regarded to be perfectly natural. So, but supernatural is kind of a marker that creates for somebody outside of this tradition a clearer understanding of what they are all about. So my first example, Separation Overcome by Soul Travel, comes from the collection Records of the Hidden and Visible Worlds, famous 5th century collection. In this story, a girl falls violently in love with a handsome man she happens to see, um, and she is drawn to him in a way that makes her soul separate from her body, assume basically a second impersonation of herself, who tries to enter this man's household. Yeah, people in this man's household bind her, bring her back to her parents, and say, "What's going on?" Parents say, "What? My daughter's in a back room. This can't be her." And the moment these two people or these two emanations of the same person encounter each other, one of them dissolves into thin air. So describing the soul splitting, I think this is a term that we might be thinking of here, longing that we can feel, and unreasonable longing that we can feel for somebody. In the story, the handsome man's wife mysteriously dies after a year, so that a new marriage can be planned and happens. My second example is not so romantic, though. It's from a collection of about written at about the same time, Garden of the Extraordinary. In this story, we meet a lonely wife in a very typical situation for the wife of an official pre-modern China. So an official is sent to take up a post in another place. His friends and family see him off and travel with him for a certain way, but then there's the point when they say goodbye and they turn back. So this story shows us this wife turning back, staying on the way back in a temple for the night, when suddenly her husband appears. Her husband appears, says literally, "The pain of separation was too hard to bear. I couldn't just leave you behind." These stories are very sparse, so we only learn that the wife behaves strangely, and a doctor is called, an acupuncturist. And when the acupuncturist applies the needle to the woman, an otter spirit leaves her body. So the husband that appeared to the lonely, freshly vulnerable woman at night was not at all her husband, but was an animal spirit who assumed the husband's form, taking advantage of this situation to make love to her. Yeah. So as I said, there's so many of these stories. There's and many of them deal with separations of very different kinds. The two examples that I gave you here are also just like one of dozens of similar stories, like the soul detaching from the body, an animal is impersonating a human, etc. So this is a very interesting and also not fully explored area of Chinese literature as well. This brings me to the end of my talk. I'd be looking forward to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.